Good morning and welcome to Dugout Dialogue. I'm your host, Blake.
And I'm your host, Matt. On today's episode, we're excited to talk about baseball and the conclusion of the 2024 season.
This is the World Series is over, where it's the 120th anniversary of a World Series being completed. America's pastime has come to another conclusion, and we ended up with the Dodgers versus Yankees in the World Series. The two big teams on each of the coasts getting an opportunity to duke it out. And boy, was it it was an interesting World Series. But leading up to it, I thought both the AL and National League division series and the rest of the playoffs were a ton of fun. And it was the Dodgers versus the Padres series that really got my attention and really kind of made me excited for this series. And I thought that was the World Series. It was who's going to win, and within their division, was it going to be the Padres or going to be the Dodgers? And that was a really good one. But in the end, the Dodgers come out on top, and they end up facing the Yankees in the World Series. What are some of the takes that you got from this World Series, and some of your thoughts on it?
I think my initial thought is this was the expectation coming into the season for the Dodgers, as it is nearly every season. When you're spending the amount of money that they are,
Hmm.
this is the result that you expect to get. When you bring in Shohei Ohtani and defer a bunch of money so that you can sign other people, this is where you're supposed to be. Now, it doesn't guarantee you to win it, but my initial thoughts are just this is what the standard is if you're going to be spending that kind of money with the players they have. And
Yeah,
so they delivered on that. Now, not every star delivered, but I think just the depth that they have is what kind of like raises your floor, because the series still could have gone the Yankees' way if but for a few things. So my initial
sure.
thoughts were is that the depth of the Dodgers, based upon all that they've purchased and traded for, that prevailed.
Well, that's a good point, and depth was the key thing for the success of the Dodgers. And I think you nailed it on the head. The deferral comment, which is going to come up later, is one of those things. You signed Shohei to a crazy wild deal. The expectation is World Series or bust. You get to the World Series, and Shohei helps lift you there, throughout the divisional series and other series, but he gets the World Series, and he's kind of cool. He goes 2 for 19 with 2 hits, no home runs. But you didn't need him to be Shohei because the rest of the team picked up the slack. And that's the tip of the cap to them for in the front office and having enough depth to be able to score enough runs. And I think that the run with the Dodgers of scoreless innings. I can't remember off the top of my head how many scoreless innings they had, but they had set the record. Uh, the bullpen and the starting pitching was just on such a run that it was so difficult to hit. And that's just gonna be the crazy part as we get into the next stage of things is when we talk about Blake Snell, and they only got better for this next year. So I think that they are a juggernaut, not in the making, but a juggernaut here to stay.
Yeah, you want to paint them as a villain just because of how much they've done. The Yankees have obviously poured a great deal of money into their players as well. It is a huge, pat on the back or just give them their flowers with the Dodgers, because it's not like they didn't have things that could have slowed them down. I mean, nearly the majority of their starting rotation was gone. I mean,
Hmm.
Glass now wasn't a huge factor, right? He's not even there. And then you have Yamamoto, who was good, but it was Walker Bueller who had been struggling all year. That was their unsung hero. So a franchise
Hmm.
that does invest an immense amount of depth, they absolutely needed it, because the guys that they were hoping to be there weren't there for them. Like as you mentioned, Shohei was the regular season MVP, but he was not that for them in the World Series. And thankfully, that's because that deal they made for Teoscar Hernandez, I mean,
That
that
paid
was
off
massive.
dividends.
Oh, huge dividends. And then you have Tommy Edman, before the trade deadline, you pick him up from the Cardinals. I mean, he was the guy carrying them in the playoffs. It was pretty remarkable. And then
Hmm.
and then obviously Freddie was just Freddie. I mean, I
Yeah.
mean, remarkable. But I say all that to look at the other guys that didn't show up. Will Smith, didn't show up, but wasn't really there. Shohei wasn't really there. The guys that you're talking about are Teoscar, Enrique, who they just brought back and got, I think he got waived and they picked him back up, and Tommy Edman. I mean, like, it's not necessarily like the big name guys that carried it through for them. So you look
Hmm.
at that as the pluses, and then you look at the Yankees and just be like, man, just for a couple decisions, this could have gone differently for them in this series. And I'll kind of just
Hmm.
highlight the top of the ninth inning in Game One, where Gleyber Torres, it looks like he hit a home run, but they call it fan interference, so he gets a double. Then
Hmm.
they intentionally walk Juan Soto, and you have bases full, not bases full, but first and second with Aaron Judge coming up and 2 outs. Can't drive him home. Aaron Judge had a horrible series.
Yep.
Not to mention potentially pulling Garrett Cole an inning earlier. Like, there's just some things that could have got him that game. And then Game 5, that fifth inning, just disastrous defensive play. This series could have been extended, and who knows? But overall, LA came on top.
Definitely. Watching the series live from game to game, you could feel the momentum in the Dodgers' direction versus the Yankees. And as the series continued, I think that the players for the Yankees felt that. And you get uncharacteristic errors. You get Aaron Judge dropping a lollipop fly ball, which he catches, 1,000 times out of 1,000. And that makes a difference, and there's little things like that, like little mistakes that they made that or mental errors rather than physical errors. And I think that it was kind of in their head. Um, and that's
Can
the
you
hard part
speak in?
about it.
Can you speak into that defensive play, because that is something that Dodgers players after the series were directly poking at and
Yep.
saying, we knew they didn't have the foundation to play in the field. Like, essentially their fielding was subpar. We knew it,
Yep.
and we were really just going to put balls in play, or at least put them
Yep.
competitively, so that they had to play the field, and they couldn't do it.
Yeah. Yep. And to elaborate on that, when you're playing in an intense situation and you're in your position and you have just a seed of doubt in your head to be like, what happens if I mess this up? Well, that seed of doubt just grew. And you get something as simple as, do I remember how to catch a pop fly? Do I remember how to take a ground ball? All these things where I've done millions of repetitions, but I've never done one in the World Series in Game 5, and I need to catch this one out, you know? And so your heart rate just increases and gets faster and faster and faster. And so when you play with confidence and you play with momentum that the Dodgers have, it's tangible. So as you're watching the series, you could watch that seed of doubt, which grew throughout the series for the Yankees, eventually blossom into this, implosion. And as a team, that's where you go as a leader in game two, maybe game three. A leader needs to step up and just squish that. You have to take the emotional out of it. You're great. You're in the World Series, and you need to be your best. And so in order to be your best, you need to believe that you can do it. And you could tell that they had that seed of doubt just grow.
I know you played first base back in your playing days. That moment in Game 5, fifth inning, where Garrett Cole is not covering first base, and Rizzo. I mean, they're both looking at each other like,
Hmm.
who you cover first? No, no, no. You're supposed to be at first.
Yep.
Um, they both could have. It looks like both of them could have made a play at first, but neither was willing to.
Garrett Cole should have been there for pitchers fielding practices 10 out of 10 times. That is his responsibility. Anytime if I'm throwing off the mound and the ball goes in my left, that's towards first base, I have to bust my butt to get over there just in case. If I'm not needed, great, I'll get out of the way, but you have to be there. It again, that was one of those things where it's like mental snafu, where the standard play didn't seem so standard when in the moment. And even though you're focusing on your pitching and you're focusing on doing the best you can with that moment with that pitch, you still need to be cognizantly aware of where you need to be after you let go. Whether that be going back up first base and pitcher's feeling Joel, or maybe you get the hit and I need to go to back up third base in case there's an errant throw. You need to know what your next move is. And if you're just thinking about, God, I hope this is a good pitch, you're not in the right mental spot.
So great series. Some big names didn't show up. Aaron Judge being one of them. Um, Shohei Ohtani being the other. But after that series ended, you're kind of looking at what's next in free agency because that comes up on us pretty quickly, winter
Yep.
meetings, and we've already seen some of those deals pop off. We could jump to deferred money here, or if you just want to jump to like some initial signings you've seen, maybe that you have liked or disliked, just based upon some initial trades and signings.
It's so early in the off season. We haven't even done the winter meetings yet, which is usually when San Diego, I think. We haven't done that where they get a chance to really to talk about trade and make those big deals. But John Heyman, broke the news that Blake Snell, 52 million signing bonus and 13 million a year of deferrals, totaling 65 million, 182 million over 5 years. And that dude is going to have a wonderful Christmas with a signing bonus that is going to be well worthwhile. Um, Now the Dodgers go from a excellent starting rotation to elite with Yamamoto, Glasnow, Sneal, Otani, and Gonsolin. I hope I pronounced that last one right. Um, but the Dodgers, you know, making a move and doing more of that deferral money, we could talk about what that deferral money looks like. But as for other free agents, the Angels have been pretty busy trying to find that second tier, third tier kind of player. Um, and finding a lot of veterans that have the ability to coach this young core for the Angels outside of the West Coast over here, the greater LA area. It's been pretty quiet. And I expect it to be quiet until the winter meetings kind of come to a conclusion. But I think that the price tags for these pitchers that are still on the free agent market are only going to go up. You have a dozen, tier one to tier two pitchers that are going to try and get 23 million a year plus for long-term deals, 3 to 5 year deals. Blake Snell being the cream of the crop for this offseason, signing his 182 over 5, good for him. But that just sets the standard, right? And that's going to be the talk of the town is how much money are these pitchers going to get as we go to the offseason? You have a deal or a signing that really blew your mind or helped move the needle for you?
So, two things. I'll answer that question, but I'll just further look at Blake Snell and be like, "Congrats to you, man!" Because that initial deal he got with San Francisco, and the fact that he started late in the season, just because the deal happened late and trying to get himself like ready and conditioned to start, he started off the year
Hmm.
quite poorly and rebounded. I mean, he had that option with the Giants, which it looked like he's gonna have to take because of just how poor the season started, and then he
Hmm.
finished. I mean, he finished like a stud. I mean, he finished on
Elite.
top and
Hmm.
was just elite. And I mean, who knows if he was with another franchise that was in the postseason where he would have been because he was just on a different level at the end of the season. So kudos to him to even get in the position to get this contract for 5 years, which surpassed where he was with the Giants. Um,
Hmm.
and then on top of it, as far as like a signing that's really stood out to me or a trade, I mean, his is the one that stands out the most, only because he's
Yeah.
going to what's already a stacked roster. I mean, the fact that the rotation they have there is an all-star roster. I mean, he reunites with his buddy Glass now when they were both
Yep.
doing damage for the Rays.
Hmm.
And then you have Yamamoto and Bobby Miller and like whoever else they want to add to it. Maybe they want to add Sasaki. Like, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Plus, Shohei Ohtani is going to be pitching again this upcoming season. It's just
Hmm.
ridiculous the arms they have on top of Gonsolin and Dustin May and Gavin Stone. Like, they just have
Yeah.
a plethora. I was reading some reports that were just talking about the Dodgers is that people want to flock there just because from the bottom of the organization to the top, they are invested in the player, eating, dietitians, training, analytics, like competitiveness, like the expectation is to win every year, and they put themselves in position backed by money to do that every year. And so
Mhm.
you can't necessarily front them there. The other big deal, aside from that, just because it was the next big deal that happened prior to Snell, would be Kikuchi with the Angels. Just
Yeah.
because the risk reward that's there, especially for a franchise that hasn't been so well with its pitching decisions, whether it's a free agent or a trade. I mean, Lucas Giolito was looking pretty good, and then the Angels trade for him, and it was anything but. I mean, that was a complete bust. So
Yeah.
with Kikuchi, the thing you can look at is that every single year he has gotten better. Every single year his walk rate has decreased. And
Mhm.
if you look at the small sample size with Houston, I mean, 32% strike rate, less than a 6% walk rate. I mean, he was looking elite. Now, the other question to that is they get him for a good rate, 3 years, 63 million. That's not the others are going to get Max Fried or Blake Snell. These guys getting 30 million plus. Like he does come in at a more affordable range, and he's 34.
Yeah.
Does that play into where the Angels were looking with their whole youth movement? Don't know, but I just look at that
Yeah.
as like the next big domino that hit of a franchise that needs to add to its starting rotation, and maybe they get a sneaky good, 1, 2, 3 starter, and kind of see where it goes from there. But I would say both Los Angeles teams are the ones that have made the initial noise with free agency.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the Angels are trying to be as aggressive as they can by trying to help set the market for pitching. And 3 years, I can't remember off the top of my head how much it was. It was 3 years, 23 million, 21 million a year, something like that. But he is really interesting to think about because when he got traded to the Astros, first thing the Astros did is you need to throw your slider more. You have a great slider and you're only throwing it 13% of the time. Let's increase that. And I believe the number is he jumped up to 30% of the time you throw that slider.
Was it a slider or was it his curveball?
I think it was a slider. We could double check, but in an off-speed pitch, he increased the efficiency with it. So again, you go fastball high, and then you start that curveball or slider in that same trajectory, and it changes your eye level, and that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to change that eye level for the hitter. Um, so with that, the big talk of the town or the talk of baseball is, with the Yankees, with the Yankees and Dodgers World Series done and free agency, the Dodgers do another deferral of money for a player, including Blake Snell. There are a number of players that have had deferral money, so it's not just unique to the Dodgers, but the Dodgers are the one that are using it the most frequently. Wanted to get your take on what are your thoughts on deferred money in baseball and how that may impact the game.
Quick fact check. You are right. It's a slider. It was actually they decreased the curveball to increase the slider. The other thing with Kikuchi is that his fastball velocity increased about a mile an hour more. That's
Nice.
at 95 and a half. It's not necessarily lighting it up, but still, it just makes him a little more deceptive with the other offerings that he had.
Hmm.
Regarding deferred money in baseball, hasn't it like always been there? I mean, Ken Griffey Jr. is still being paid by the Cincinnati Reds until what, this year? I mean, or very very close to it. So
Hmm.
the fact that it's just always been there. I just think with the Dodgers and why we're talking so much about it right now is we've never seen it on the scale that they are with as
Yes.
many players that they have.
Yes.
I mean, nearly every team has someone that they're deferring money on, but it's not at the scale, not tens of millions or 100 million. It's not that large, nor is it with so many players because you have with the Dodgers, it seems like nearly all of them have some means of deferment. Betts, Freeman, Shohei. Now you have Snell. Like some means of it is being deferred, which is allowing essentially it's going to get paid no matter what.
Hmm.
But
When it gets paid
it's
is.
when it gets paid. And
Hmm.
so the Dodgers are just trying to do all that they can to stack the deck as much as they can. Other teams can do it. I
Yeah.
mean, let me see if I can quickly pull up this comment here. But I saved this here to go over because um, there are other franchises that could do this. But why they're not, I don't know. I can't find it here. But the point is,
No
is that
worries.
when it comes to this deferred money, other teams can do it. The Angels could have done it with Shohei. They didn't offer it. Every other big market team could do it. All these small market teams could do it. They choose not to, and they pocket the money themselves. That's
Hmm.
oftentimes why, as an Angels fan, you'd be upset with Artie Moreno because you just want to see a better product on the field. The
Yeah.
Dodgers are at least giving you everything. Yes, your ticket prices go up. Yes, your Dodger dogs are going up. But do you really give two flying hoots when you're winning? You may
Yeah.
not be winning a championship, but you're putting yourself in a position to compete every year. And other teams could do this too, and they're choosing not to.
Yeah, that is a good point. What I was thinking about this deferral money, economically, it makes sense if I'm a player. Shohei's going to get most of his money when he's done and retired, and he's no longer in California and subject to the taxes of California. Hopefully him and his wife and his cute little dog are back in Japan, enjoying life, and they're subject to those tax codes. Another thing I was thinking about, it's starting to feel a little bit like football money, where you're kind of starting to finagle and doing deferments. You're even doing signing bonuses, and signing bonuses don't count for that year's number. So they can get away with, giving him a big bonus, and it doesn't count against the luxury tax. So there's multiple loopholes here that are kind of being in works and starting to remind me a little bit of football, good, bad, or indifferent. My thing is that for competitive fairness, I understand this loophole is available to everyone. If we're going to be doing this and have a cap or have a threshold, that means that all the teams need to abide by it. Because if I'm the Cincinnati Reds, if I'm the Milwaukee Brewers, I'd be pissed. Because we don't have that same. They do have the same luxury, the ability to do it, but the likelihood of doing it due to the economics is way lower. The Dodgers, the Yankees, and they're the only two teams that come to mind that have their own network. They have the financial institutions within the organization to be able to finance and take care of all these things long term. Everyone else is subject to TV deals and basic ticket sales and revenue that way. So I think it's a little bit different. It's more of like the haves and the have-nots in baseball, and I think this is going to create a bigger wedge between lower and top tier teams.
No, we're seeing it. And we're seeing it not just within the same regionality, again, between the Angels and Dodgers, but just across baseball. I mean, as a baseball fan, I want to see Baltimore go more in. I'd love to see them win a championship. I would love to see Cincinnati, the oldest franchise, win a championship. But these teams, I mean, they're just not making the same investment.
Mhm.
Maybe what we'll see this offseason, we haven't seen it yet, but we know that they're pursuing it. It's Cohen and the Mets. Can they land Juan Soto? Can they land Corbin Burns? Like, can they continue to make this push? We gave, I say we, but just like baseball fans gave a lot of, criticism to the Mets when they went all in with Verlander and with Scherzer, and that did not pan out. But they got out of
Mhm.
that pretty quick. They rebounded and made the postseason this year. Let's see what they can do now. Can they land Juan Soto and get some other players? I mean, their farm is on the up, so
Yep.
we just want to see parity. We want to see. I mean, unless you're a Dodgers fan, you don't want to see any parity. But other than that, you want to see parity.
Most definitely. Well, I'll leave you with this last question. With the biggest arm on the market now being Corbin Burns and the biggest bat being Juan Soto, do you have a prediction of where either of these players land?
Great, great, um, great question. Corbin Burns, man, I would. I mean, for parity's sake, I somehow wish he'd go to the Padres just because they're going to be I think, the biggest push against the Dodgers. But I'd like to see him go back to Baltimore. Really, I'd like to see that small market team continue to thrive. They have great development. They don't
Mhm.
necessarily have deep pitching prospects right now, so that's where they could really use the help. So Corbin Burns back to Baltimore, a longer term deal would be awesome to me. Juan Soto, Mets. I mean, just get somebody else in play. Mets or even Giants. I'd be totally down to see him blowing up home runs in that park. So
Mm.
just something to where it's a little different. I mean, because I know those teams are in contention. And just you didn't ask it, but just throwing it out there. I would like to see Roki Sasaki go to the Angels. I don't think that's going to happen, but I would love to see that happen again, just for parity's sake, and just continuing to make teams a little bit more competitive across the board.
Yeah, definitely. I think Soto ends up in one of the two New York teams, either the Mets or Yankees. I have a hard time with Soto going to San Francisco for the same reason Judge didn't want to. He didn't want to live in the shadow of some of the greats that have played there. Totally get it. They both seem like East Coast guys, any way you cut it up. So you never know. And even though
Would you
Soto,
hold that? Would you hold that thought though, given that I mean, you played for the Yankees, like you're used to dealing with greats. I mean, you're used to dealing with competing. I mean, he literally has two giants that hit home runs next to him as well. So
yeah, I guess that's a fair point. Um, I guess if I'm a player, I'm looking for what's the maximum money I could get and what's the greatest opportunity for success.
yeah,
And I think Giants need a couple of moves to be relevant, because they're in a tough division and the division's only getting tougher.
agreed.
So that would be my 2 cents on that. And then Corbin Burns, I'm going to parrot your answer. I just for the sake of baseball and the franchise itself, I think Baltimore would greatly benefit from retaining him and maybe adding another player or two to kind of help reinforce that starting pitching core. With that, they'll be able to, try and fend off, the division and make a run. Corbin Burns was phenomenal this past season. He's going to get a payday, probably not as high as Sneal, but really, really good. I mean, he's going to be sitting pretty. Either way, it's going to be a really fun off season. We just wanted to come on here and thank you for watching Dugout Dialogue. We hope that you enjoyed this discussion today as you wrap up the 2024 season.
Do you have any questions for Blake or I? If you do, you can connect with us on all social media handles: X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or even by email at dugoutdialogue@gmail.com. Until next time, I am your co-host, Matt.
And I'm your co host, Blake. Thanks for tuning in to today's show at Dugout Dialogue, and we hope to see you on the next episode. Talk to you later, amigo.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.